Thanks for pressing play. Legends and Losers is sponsored by our good friends at Oracle NetSuite. To turbocharge your growth, check out netsuite.com/legends. On this episode, one of my favorite people, the incredible Eddie Yoon. He's the author of a book I highly recommend called Superconsumers. He is the growth strategist to the Fortune 100. He's a guru on categories, on marketing, and so much more. He's a fun guy. He's a warm guy. He's an affable guy. And I know you're going to love this conversation with the legendary Eddie Yoon. All right. The Ramones said, hey ho, let's go. Hello, my legendary friends. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're a new listener tuning in for the first time, thank you so much. We're not your grandfather's podcast. And if you are a longtime listener, I just want you to know you're the reason we do this thing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, there seems to have been an uptick lately in emails and some wonderful reviews and so forth. And I just want you to know it means the world to me when you share the show. And I love to get your notes. If you want to send me a note, you can send email to blackhole@legendsandlosers.com. Now here he is, the incredible Eddie Yoon.
It is what it is. You and I both know that failure is ultimately a good thing, and being left out is ultimately going to force you to carve out your niche and the like, right? And to me, like I've kind of stopped being worked up about it, but my broader realization is that if you don't fit the mold, then you're kind of like not excluded, but the door is slightly closed for you in a university setting. And I think the same is true in the business world, right? Is the bigger the company, the more I think there's a premium placed on extroverts, people who can fake it till you make it, walk the talk, and they look the part, as it were, whatever that looks like from a gender, race, income, whatever. And I think the niche down bit of it is people. I just kind of find it like the tribe is people who are introverts, who they know their stuff, they're good at what they do, and they just don't, at some level, want to put up with the game and that has to be played. That is not necessarily what gives them energy and stuff. So that's what I've been observing, is that a lot of my clients and a lot of my friends and random people that I don't know who are asking about my solopreneur gig, I see a pattern of people who don't want to play the politicking game, but are probably more often than not introverts in an extroverted world.
And do you think an introvert in an extroverted world is more apt to go solopreneur and be successful, or less apt, or apt?
That's my hypothesis, is that it's people who you learn by reading, writing, and thinking at some level, and you are more comfortable in smaller groups versus big groups. And I think and I draw a lot of this from Susan Cain's book, Quiet, right? And what she's written about this, and that there's a third part of this, is that, you kind of have this correlation between introverts and being a maverick, right? Because you've kind of processed the world. Like if you read Michael Lewis's, The Big Short in the movie, right? It's people who are thinking against the grain by consuming lots of information in solo, like more quiet spaces. And they come to a point of view that doesn't fit with the conventional wisdom, and the conventional wisdom rejects them, and they have to find their own path, which worked out great for those guys and stuff.
Yeah. So that's an interesting insight. You think, I want to make sure I understand, that if you're a little more on the introverted side, that you might be more drawn to solopreneurship and maybe more successful at it than an extrovert might be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a hypothesis, and, so I'm a pretty strong introvert married to an even stronger introvert, and both of us have become more introverted over time. And everyone who told me
your the I in introvert keeps getting bigger, because
right?
you self-reinforce.
Exactly. No, and it's
so you guys get home after a long day's work and don't talk to each other.
We're near each other, but we telepathically communicate. No, I mean what's been my observation, like a lot of people who warned me about the solopreneur thing, they were like, just be forewarned, you're going to be lonely. You're going to miss, the office and the people and teams. And there's certainly certain people that I miss. And what's also true is there's a lot of people that I don't miss. And, I'm not lonely yet. I mean, maybe I'll get there, but it's because I get to talk to the people that I want to talk to, who are fellow thinkers and talking to you and communicating and being in touch with you. I've not felt lonely at all, and I'd much rather talk to you than just kind of the normal parts of being in a bigger company and the like, right? It's like you're being able to choose and be careful and selective about the people that you want to engage with who are like-minded and similar learners and the like, right?
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I also think as a solopreneur, youpreneur, small E entrepreneur, you to your point, you choose. Like I'm the opposite of lonely. You know, I choose who I talk to and about which topics, and I find, frankly, I'm incredibly stimulated by who I get to talk to. Right, I get to smart venture capitalists and smart entrepreneurs and smart authors like Eddie Yoon, and and now of course I have the podcast. That's a whole other the fact that I get to have 2 or 3 conversations with somebody
top
really
iTunes podcasts. Correct yourself.
In a world of 500,000. Somehow, who would have ever thought? But yeah, so, and I not that having partners or colleagues or bosses or whatever, those are all cool things if you get those right, for sure. That said, there is something super cool about sort of you and I decide what to do together, when to do it together, because we want to. Like my boss isn't making me call Eddie and ask him for help on our new book, or like nobody's making me and you interact, right? We interact because it's fun. We enjoy each other. I always learn things from you. And so that ability to, hey, we work together, we do stuff together because we think it's cool, not because somebody's forcing us, is kind of an interesting approach.
And it's completely freeing. And to me, I think it's, it's like going to a school and there's no core curriculum. You just take all electives. You just take whatever the heck you want to take, right? I mean, it's or, like, can you imagine in an iTunes world where you pick and choose your own playlist, going back to a world of albums and stuff? Like, I just can't imagine doing that, right?
Well, yeah, and like the other day I had the radio on in the car, like, sometimes the radio comes on. And if you listen to radio at all, even music radio or talk radio, whatever you want, it's as somebody who consumes music with Spotify and Pandora, and somebody who consumes, podcasts, not radio, almost never. Sometimes I'll listen to the news on the radio if I'm driving, but that's really about it. But when you turn on a radio station, it's mind-blowing how much it sucks.
Yeah.
Because we're used to being able to do whatever we want, right? The other thing, too, about radio is, look, and I know their revenue is declining, but it seems like, I know this is a mass exaggeration, but 90% of it is ads.
Yeah. No, and I think this, this massive migration of, media driven by advertising towards some sort of either subscription basis or, podcasts to me are the super consumerization of radio, right? And talk, like I just want to talk to whoever I want to. I want to listen to whoever I want to listen to whenever I want, however I want, and I want to do it ad free, or at least I will accept ads at the beginning, at the end of a podcast, or in the middle, because I've already cherry picked the best content that I really want with it, right? Versus it being forced down my throat.
Well, and I think the smart, of course, a lot of podcasters don't have advertisers at all, but the podcasts that do, I think a lot of the smart ones or big ones are smart about how they do it, right?
Yeah.
So, if you take, for example, my buddy Jordan Harbinger, who's, a giant podcaster, he's got ads, but they're not overwhelming during the show. And a smart podcaster does them in a way that if you decide not to fast forward through them and you like the podcaster, then actually the ads aren't that bad. Like on Jordan's show, he and his producer Jason DeFilippo kind of do the ads together, and they banter and they have a little chatty poo, and they make it part of the show. And so
it's more content than it is ad, to your point.
Well,
right?
They're smart about that, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is the good podcasters aren't doing what some of the dumb digital media
Yeah.
properties are doing, where they give you 1 inch of screen and the rest is pop-ups and ads.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it goes back to a concept we've talked about beforehand of this whole idea of missionary versus mercenary. Like,
Do you
I
know
think,
I quote you every 15 minutes on that?
well, I'm glad because it matters coming from you because I think you embody this. And, to your point about, I love your point about Jordan Harbinger's podcast because it's like, your podcast, his and others, like when it's done, you can just tell the advertisers are curated, right? That it's not just that the lowest common denominator or the highest CPM. It's like I've picked them because I like them, I use them, I know the people behind it, and so
Yeah.
like my experience has been when I hear ads on podcasts in general. Is that I like them because they're oftentimes from new companies that I've never heard of before or different ones I want to learn more about. And that kind of stuff is great versus say I'm just going to sell my airtime to the highest bidder and there's no rhyme or reason for why
Yeah.
they're on there and stuff.
Yeah, our founding sponsor, of course, is NetSuite,
Mhm.
and it makes sense, right? They're
Totally.
not an underwater basket weaving company, right? It's not some random, or like a hair care company is probably not going to sponsor Legends and Losers because like no one's going to believe that I'm like stoked about some hair care product. I don't
Unless
have
you
the.
turn into Brian Urlacher and they're like, we'll see you in the next couple of days.
Yeah, maybe if you want to promote your bald headed shoe shine or whatever. I don't know, whatever bald guys are supposed to put on their heads. Maybe sunscreen. Maybe that would be a better one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you'd be surprised at how many. I think I had written a piece about this at one point of how disconnected ads are from the content that is being shown. Like you're watching, like you go to a movie and the trailers that come on, and I'm there with my kids because it's a kids movie, and some horror movie trailer comes. You're like, just what the hell, man? Like I didn't want this, and it's
Yeah,
out
and
of
the trailer
context.
to a horror movie will scare the shit out of most people.
Exactly. Right.
Certainly a kid. Like my wife won't watch that.
Yeah, I don't want to. I mean, it's like you run out of hands to cover eyes and ears, and you're just scrambling. And anyway, but like I think this notion of it's not contextual and at some point offensive, right? It's like I remember the whole like how many kind of Cialis or Viagra commercials coming on in sports events, and I'm like, when my kids were younger, they're like, "What's that about?" Like, I'm like, okay, what do I say at that point and stuff?
Well,
So.
you see, when dad gives mom a special hug, sometimes he needs a little help with the special hug.
It's like this is the origin story that you don't want to hear.
Actually, they should do, if they were smart, those guys, they would do a series of ads on how to talk to your kids about listening to the ads.
And that would actually be helpful and stuff. And so,
When a mommy loves a daddy. So now that you're more than a year in, I mean, I got to
yeah,
believe one of the questions people ask you when you do this, and I'm not a guy that likes to sort of focus on money that much because it's an important motivator. I think it's an important topic, but it's not a primary motivator for me anyway. It's very important, but it's not like the
mhm,
primary one. But all that said, I think a big fear a lot of people have, particularly if they've been a successful corporate executive, they're now going to cut that umbilical cord and there's am I going to be able to replace my salary as a solopreneur? And of course, if you're American, you worry about healthcare because
yeah,
that's a big one. And so and you tell me what level of comfort you have with this part of the discussion, Eddie. But I'm very curious, because I think that's a big thing that stops people from making the jump that you've made.
yeah,
And so, how does it look now, more than a year into it?
yeah. No, I mean, it's been really quite interesting, and I think you know, I had those fears, and certainly, talking to you about it was super helpful. Of like, look, there's going to be more variability, but what it means is the highs are higher and the lows are lower, and as long as you're in it for the long run, like, basically, if your horizon is long enough, the highs probably outweigh the lows. Kind of the rational way that I think you taught me to think about it. And the other bit that was interesting contextually was like, recognizing the amount of risk and variability that exists in any corporate job anyway, right? I mean, it's like, it's not to say that you have any more security than you really think you do. And then I think for me, it was um, a really between your advice of, I remember the whole thing about you're the master sensei and be choosy about the students and set your price high, right? And another mentor of mine, a guy by the name of Mark Leader, who was a ex McKinsey partner and ex Bain partner, was a chief strategy officer at Nielsen. Has done solopreneur stuff off and on. Is doing it now, and very similar thing of just like your prices ought to be high and free, right? And this interesting notion of when you are actually offering what you really want to offer, keep your prices really, really high because you add a lot of value. But then, what you ought to be willing to do is give away that Costco sample that we talked about the last time of like, I have, strategy, insights about consumers and growth up the wazoo. So it's no skin off of my nose to give you anything for free and the like and stuff. And so I would say that my experience has been way better. Like I think I will probably, far exceed what I was doing beforehand. And my guess is that it'll be comparable to what a senior partner would do at any consulting firm out there. And I probably work half as much and travel a fraction of what they do.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I heard what you said.
Yeah.
You're on track to make more or at least as much.
Yeah.
And you're working half as much.
Yeah.
So effectively, you doubled your income.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way. But more importantly, maybe the better way, you'll tell me, you have a whole you have a life design and a work design that actually sits inside of each other. They're one and the same. Is that how it feels for you?
You got it. And really what's interesting is I think just doing the math as you were just describing is like, effectively when I had my old job and anyone in a corporate job, you are a solopreneur or youpreneur and your price is actually pretty low. Like, you're doing, it's no different than what you were doing beforehand. And so like the math of a consulting partner, I was probably generating $5 to $8 million of consulting revenue a year. And, you keep a fraction of that because you got to pay shareholders, you have cost of goods, office, all that kind of good stuff. Right. And, what is true now is like you're generating less revenue because my price, I'll walk through a little bit more math of like, so when I was at Cambridge, we would charge $200 to $300 a month for consulting. I think the McKinsey of the world are $500, $600, even $900 a month, which is kind of amazing to think about. And I can go out and say, you know what? I'll probably charge clients $100 a month. It'll just be me. But you're paying for this in your partner who you never see in a traditional consulting thing. And I'm not going to give you a 200-page deck. I'm going to give you the 10 pages that matter. And, and that's been extraordinarily valuable. And so I think clients have really, old clients have said, this is a better model. New clients have said, this is great. And even some other ones have said like, you know what I'm going to do? I have to bring in big, consulting firm. Can you come with and babysit and make sure they don't do bad things or they're up to speed, right? Because it's really quite interesting because they'll say like, you're a fraction of what they're charging, but I got some, 28-year-old who's never done this before, who's clearly, just one step ahead of, the bear. And I never see the senior partner. And, you're there with all these years of experience, my category, my business really well, and you just run circles around them. And it's a little bit, it's like the equation just doesn't work, right? So it's been a little bit of, I think, this notion of the math of this whole thing, when you really break it down, works really well. Not just for me, but for almost anyone out there, right? Because that's just what I fundamentally believe is that what you realize is that you've been giving away the value at a much lower price as a solopreneur in a job. You just haven't really thought about it that way.
Yep. Man, I am so stoked to hear all this, Eddie. It's exactly what I thought you would discover as you went into this world, sort of having a pretty good idea of who you were, in the world of Fortune 500 strategy and growth and category guru-y stuff. um, so I'm stoked to see that it happened. The other thing I got to sort of ask you in this regard, did you discover your network was better than you might have otherwise realized?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's definitely for sure. And it's I mean, certainly being friends with you certainly helps and all that good stuff. But the
I gotta
I
believe being friends with me didn't make much of a. I mean, why would that matter?
because I learned stuff from you, and so I would say everybody brings their own network, right? And then when two like-minded people with complementary and generally less overlapping networks combine together, then I do think it does open up a lot of different things that are out there. Because I've had folks reached out to me on social media who've discovered me through you, right?
Oh,
Through your
that's
books.
awesome.
Like, so yeah, that's really, really cool. And
I
I'm like,
love
hey,
it when that happens.
yeah, yeah, that part is really, really fun, right? It's like, whatever, like in the Super Bowl when multiple artists come out and do the same, I'm covering your songs or the like and stuff, right?
Well, and people say to me, "Hey, like, do you get a cut of super consumers? Because like, or does Eddie give you $1,000 every time you say super consumers or something?"
I should.
No, I don't. That's the last thing I want for you. But see, that it actually goes to what we were talking about earlier,
Yeah,
right? Like attracts like. We do this
yeah,
stuff, and so I'm super stoked to hear that.
yeah,
The other thing I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Actually, can I tell you a quick story about this?
yeah.
So, I sort of in my head was calling myself retired, and then and that was like 2 years ago when Play Bigger came out, and then my now new buddy Bill Walton kind of whacked me in the head and said, "Hey, you're not retired. Stop saying that." Right? And I realized, he's right. And then I also had this other aha, which is, Kevin Maney
Mhm.
and Duncan Davidson and Mike Maples, these super smart people, started to educate me like, hey, dummy, it's 1897. This is the greatest time ever to be
Yeah,
alive. Like, look at the
yeah,
list, AI and the cloud and machine learning and 3D printing of pizza and like all of it, right? Like, and you're just going to just take the whole thing off? Like, what are you, nuts? And so, anyway, long story longer, I decided that I would be a little more open, let me say it that
yeah.
way, to doing some of the strategery stuff that I used to do. Anyway, so now, long story longer, I've taken on a couple of really fun gigs,
Oh, great.
and one of them I'm excited about all of them, and there's just one in particular that's a huge opportunity that I'm super excited about. Anyway, so we agree to the economics on the deal, and I'm fired up about the company and the CEO and the team and the whole thing. Anyway, so we're now in the negotiating the T's and C's. We've agreed on the economics, and now the lawyers are involved, and
Yeah,
we're doing this stuff. And I forget what it was, but there was that last sort of minute check in that I needed to do, and there was a couple things I wanted that I sort of wasn't getting, nothing big,
mhm,
and that the sort of discussion had been very professional, as you would hope when you get the lawyers involved and all that. Anyway, so I'm sort of having the final tie off with the CEO, and I bring up whatever the one or two points are that I'm still a little stuck on, that they're kind of nudging on, and he finally says to me, he says, "Hey, Chris, we have an agreement on the table with you for," and then he says the economics, and listen, to sound at the risk of sounding immodest, the economics were non-trivial, right? And he says, and there's really no SOW. As a matter of fact, the head of my comp committee said, "You realize this document doesn't really say what this guy's going to do for us, and we're paying him like all this money, right?" And and then the CEO says, "Yeah, but it's Chris Lochhead." And the guy who's the head of the comp committee goes, "Oh yeah, that's right." So anyway, he shares this story with me as I'm pushing on these things that I want, as a way to remind me that they've just agreed to this agreement with me that essentially doesn't say I'm going to do anything for them. And so like I should be a little more relaxed about these last little T's and C's that I care about. And I'm just laughing. Anyway, why do I share that with you? That stuck in my head, and I thought, How does that happen in one's life? I thought how lucky I was to be in this situation, right? And the word that came to my mind is reputation. I don't know. I don't know all the board members in this company, but I know most of them a little, or at least a little by reputation, half a degree of separation kind of thing. Same thing with the executive team. I know some of them, but obviously in this case, I know the CEO really well. But I thought, how does one get a deal done like this?
Yeah.
And the word that popped into my head was reputation. And today we hear a lot about, oh, I'd like to network with you and personal branding and all this stuff. And I, have a less than favorable perspective on that. We can talk about it if you care. But what I hear you saying is that your reputation, coupled with the way you deal with people, has allowed you to create this new chapter in your life. But that's how I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm obviously filtering it through the lens of my own experience. But I'm curious how you think about, in particular, Eddie, this your reputation.
Yeah. It's I think your story is a perfect bridge to this, because it's the way that I would describe. If the double click on reputation for me is track record of outcomes, and I'm sure there's a better way of saying it, right? And
I don't know that there is. I like that way. Keep going.
Well, so like you're doing this solopreneur thing, and you're like, well, how do I did a segment on CNBC yesterday on MoviePass, which was fun, but like, they're always like, what do I call you? I'm like, well, just call me the founder of Eddie Would Grow. And the people, the hosts, I think it was Andrew Ross Sorkin and Sarah Eisen, like they're not surfers or whatever, right? So, she's just like, Eddie would grow, and they're like, well, I don't want to explain all of that stuff. But it's the, it there's nothing that I could call myself that would change, like, well, you're just a guy, who are you, right? Other than I stand behind, and the simplest way to talk about my reputation is, I have been privileged to be part of 8 companies that have doubled or tripled their revenues in a 5 to 7 year time span. And from hundreds of millions to more hundreds of millions to 1 billion to 4.5 billion. And, I'm not saying that I was totally responsible for that. But, there's lessons learned that I have picked up and themes that I can pull together that I think might be helpful. And so if you're, I'm not really interested in, I can help you decline from -3 to -2, or go from 1% to 2%. Category design, as you describe it in the growth strategy that it's all about, like, what would need to be true to triple or double your business size. And that kind of thinking, I think, is that exponential thinking is the way that people should be doing strategy. And that's when I think about reputation, is like, that's what I hang my hat on. It's not what I've, where I worked or where I went to school or anything else that I've done. Is like, I have seen this happen, and I wish for this to happen for other people. And that I think, and again, that so it's reputation of the outcomes is number one. I think the intent and your motivation for doing what you're doing, right? And I think I take away from all the work that you put in, I mean, as you said, a labor of love, legends and losers, because you weren't always sponsored by NetSuite and the like and stuff, was it's this, you had this missionary zeal to unpack what causes legendary outcomes and legendary people, right? And that the relationship to losery, as you call it, right? And what that was there. And like, I think there's no doubt that it's Christopher Lochhead, like, why do we need an SOW? Is because you've committed yourself to a lifelong process of learning what makes companies legendary. And I feel like I've done the same of the last 20 years. Why is it that a company could actually double in a category that's growing 2-3% a year and stuff, right? And these are the things that I think that your comment about reputation is key, because it's the outcomes, it's the motivation and intent. And I think those two in combination are really what I've realized is, like, if you have a track record of outcomes, they know why you're doing this, and that you're not out to, as you said, make the most amount of money, there's not an ulterior motive that's there. And I think this lifelong commitment to learning, and which comes with a humility to say, I don't know everything. Why wouldn't you want to spend time and be surrounded by people like that, right?
I mean, certainly that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I love how you talk about reputation and outcomes, Eddie. I think you actually just crystallized something in my head. Why do I have this strong averse reaction when I hear people talk about, well, I need to develop my personal brand, or I want to network with you? Like, they literally, I'm sure you get this email. They email and they say, I'd like to network with you. And I'm connecting what you're saying with something that my buddy Jay Larson said on Legends and Losers. He and I worked together back in the Mercury days, and he's a multi-time CEO now. He runs a really hot company today called Optimizely. Anyway, he was talking about people asking him to mentor them. And he was reflecting on when he was at Oracle and watching Ray Lane, who was the number 2 guy at Oracle at the time, whatever his title was. And he said he learned so much just from watching Ray do his job, because Ray was incredible. And so what Jay said was, when somebody asks him to mentor them, he said, really, the best mentoring I can give anybody is to be great at my job. And so what you're saying and what he says connect to in my head insofar as what I react to with all this, oh, let's network and let's build our personal brand. No, let's go out and do substantive things that produce meaningful, extraordinary, and dare I say legendary outcomes. And if you do legendary work, you don't need to, quote unquote, network like an idiot, like for the sake of networking, which is what I react negatively to. You don't need to craft a personal brand that is some bullshit image of yourself that you wish the world had. No, go be legendary at what you do.
Yeah. Well, to me, I love it. It's you need a desire for legendary outcomes, as you described it, lifelong learning, and I'm screwing up my alliteration because I don't have an L for this one, but like, whatever it is about the intent, like why are you in this, right? Like, what is it that floats your boat? And if money was no object, what would give you the most joy and excitement in your life? And for me in my career, it's like, there's just nothing cooler than seeing a company double or triple in size. Like, I just think it's amazing.
If you're going to be in business, do that.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's not to say that other outcomes are bad if you have a stable business and the like, or your business is growing a couple percent points a year, but like, it's just not as much fun. There's not as much to learn, for me at least. And I think that, all the stuff that you got to in your category, in Play Bigger, category design, 7 years to the IPO, like, it's, if your company is on a trajectory to double or triple, it's probably because they are the category king and they've done all the things that you described, right? That's the telltale sign for me of like, are you a category king? Maybe it's, the 7-year IPO thing that you talked about, but it's like a company that it is growing that significantly. Good sign that they're doing something pretty amazing there.
Yeah. And so if I think to your career and where you are now, would this be a way to think about it, which is you, after 20 plus years of building a reputation, doing meaningful work, writing for HBR, all of the things that you achieved, becoming a senior partner, all the good stuff, you built that reputation, and by striking out on your own, you're sort of monetizing yourself. Is that you're capitalizing on the 20 plus years of building that reputation, building that IP, building those relationships?
I think it's there. Let's noodle on this, because I think there's certainly aspects of it. I think that for sure what I've said is the move is I've raised my price. And in traditional economic theory, you raise your price, your volume goes down, right? And as you described, I raised my price, my volume stayed pretty high and stuff, so that's worked out great. But in a world where volume drops, I have that much more leisure time to be with the family, to be in Hawaii, or to learn and do other stuff. And it's like, either scenario is fantastic, right? And so, to your point, like, a couple years of zero volume, and then I'll have to rethink about, what I do to provide for the family and the like. But, I've tried to keep our family cost structure low so that, we have some flexibility there.
Yeah.
But I think what I have, where I'm at now is, it's the way that I would put it is like, can I, physician, heal thyself? Can I apply the same things that I've told my clients
Yes.
to myself? Right. And, if you've got a great company in a great category, raise your prices, right? It's just kind of the ultimate sign of health. A healthy business is the ability to do that. And, and that's kind of like, there's a bit of like, I never really thought of myself as having an entrepreneurial streak, but perhaps I did, and I didn't realize it. But like, to me, this is the best situation to learn, because the rate of learning that I had in consulting was great, because it's way more than necessarily in a corporate gig where you're in one category and you're just kind of doing that. But the rate of learning that I have now, because different people are reaching out, it's exponentially higher. I still learn from doing consulting work. I learn from writing and going on talking to people like you. And then also what's been fascinating is like, I've, a lot of people will reach out and like, can you help me? And I'm like, well, you're probably not a great fit for the traditional advisory work that I do, but I'll just tell you the answer. It's uninformed and unencumbered by facts, but this is what I think. And that has worked out. And I get feedback of like, hey, that worked or that didn't work and stuff. And I think I've just accelerated the frequency with which I learn, because maybe that's the part that I've gotten the most joy out of. But I think, your ability to set the Christopher Lochhead price with this, gig that you have coming up, I think it's a function of people who are committed to learning about legendary outcomes, and the motivation is pure, right?
Yes. If it's not the case in this situation I just described, I will fall over shocked. I mean, these are, I have found, I'd be curious if you have found this, but whether it was solopreneuring or any kind of being an advisor, consultant, board, whatever you want to call that, coach, sensei.
Yeah.
Anytime I've done that, the number one thing I'm always dealing with, a pre-sale, and frankly, once you're in the engagement, is the level of commitment to truly doing this. Because as you know, there are some big things that you got to be willing to do if you want to try and double the value of a company in a relatively short period of time, and put it on a meaningfully different trajectory than it's on right now. One of my favorite lines, it takes courage to be legendary. And so I'm always looking like, do these people have the balls, brains, and bucks to actually do this? And I'm always testing that. And what I've found over the course of 30-something years is the vast majority of people don't. And that's just a huge source of disappointment. And so one of the ways to deal with that is to be extremely expensive, because at least it shows if they're willing to spend a bunch of money on you, then it shows some level of commitment, because in our culture, money equals value, and value equals importance, and importance equals commitment.
Yeah. Well, and the best place to be is when you are personally very expensive, and yet a relative value versus the other options that they were looking at and stuff, right?
Well, see, that's category design right there.
That's category design.
Is getting the world to think that you are uniquely qualified to do this thing that almost nobody, if maybe even nobody else, can do, and that thing is worth a lot, right? Yeah. Well, that's the trick.
That is a trick. And I think what I've come to realize is that, and this is why I love, I'm not surprised at all that Niche Down has been successful, is that I think everybody has a spike somewhere, and it may not be as prominent or as, publicly valued by the world, but somebody's got, I would say, if you have gotten a career, there's been, and you rank ordered every moment in your career from legendary to not, right? There's a nugget of insight there about, is that the top 3 legendary moments in your career, is that something that you could niche down and charge a crazy price premium for, right? And because the whole genesis of, if I go back to what we talked about in the last pod time I was on Legends of Losers, was the time that I got dressed down by a CMO about my work didn't, costing them money and didn't work out. Was it forced me to force rank my most legendary to my most losery moments and see the patterns within that. And I think that's introspection, again, an introvert, trait, was, I think, extremely critical for me to get to this point that I'm at, of like, not going to do everything, but the things that I know that I've had legendary moments with, and that I know I have expertise with, I can charge an extraordinary price premium for that. And as a solopreneur, you don't really have to worry about like, am I going to eat all the market share in the space, because you're just you.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not a volume game.
Yes.
Now, I'm also curious, Eddie, I think you've done a spectacular job of category design for yourself, and as well of marketing. You wrap yourself in Hawaii as a thematic thing, and so that's very, very cool. Obviously, as a Hawaiian, that's fun. Particularly a Hawaiian who lives in Chicago a lot of the year. So that's, I love your like backgrounds where they always have like palm trees and shit. And I'm like wondering like, is it February in in Chicago when he's doing this? And then you've gotten very good at your short little video blog things, right? And as an introverted guy, like you've trained yourself to look into a camera standing on a beach and tell me about something, right? As you were doing over the summer with sort of sharing your solopreneur experiences, that I thought was sort of a fun thing to do. And then the other thing you've done incredibly well is PR. I mean, you were mentioning, you're on CNBC, you're on Fox News, you're on all the stuff. And so maybe tell me a little bit about the marketing that you do, and how you've done it, and how really right out of the chute you've had a lot of success.
Yeah, it's been knock on wood, and thanks, grateful for all the serendipity and blessing that's come this way with it. But like, I think it's been kind of this synergy and overlap of a couple of things. So I think we've talked about this idea of a Costco sample, right? Like when you've done category design for all the years that you've done it, it just falls out of you, right? And you've got more than enough to spare. And it's one of those things, like it's zero variable cost to you to share this with everybody, so you may as well share it, right? So so I think there's some realization of like, what, the nuggets that I have learned over the years, somebody can get value out of it. So I think, so there's content, you start with there, right? I have a great PR team, Shanna Starr, LFPR. Actually, I know she's going to rebrand her agency to something that you and I will be very excited about. I'll tell you about when she's actually done it and stuff. But like what's been interesting.
Shanna Starr?
Starr, yeah. She's out of LA and stuff. And so
did you know her from before, or did you find her when you started?
Yeah,
It Would Grow, or?
It was another buddy of mine, Rafi Mohammed, that right?
Who you introduced us to, and who's in the book and did a great job for us, by the way. And I'm really dying to have him on Legends and Losers, because he brought that whole dimension of pricing to Niche Down in a really, I thought we had a very awesome discussion with him, Heather and I, thanks to you. And then Heather, I thought, did an amazing job of taking that discussion and incorporating it into the book. But that's a smart dude right there, that dude.
He's smart, but he's probably the best. I don't know how to describe it. He's a great storyteller in and of himself, but he's for sure got to be the best of the best PhD in economics from Cornell storytellers. That's super engaging and stuff. Like between the Venn diagram of PhD in economics from an Ivy League school, pricing guru, and great storyteller, I think is Rafi. He's in the middle of that.
That's his niche down. That Venn diagram right there.
Yeah. So I think he was the one that introduced me to the firm, and because he was doing the solopreneur thing way longer than I had, and it was another great mentor and advice provider. But he and I share the same editor at HBR, Dan McGinn, who you also know, author of Psyched Up and Life.
Thanks to you, and one of my favorite episodes of Legends and Losers. His book, Psyched Up, Psyched Out. Yeah. Great book. And what another great example of that's a niche down idea.
That is a niche down.
I want to understand what happens in the moment before the moment, and why some people, can get on stage and play guitar like Eddie Van Halen, and some people get on stage and poop their pants, right? That's a very niche-y kind of idea, and he wrote a great book about that, those moments before the moment.
Well, not to get off on a segue, but I think it proves that there is unlimited demand for expertise, and there's probably near unlimited price inelasticity for that expertise as well too, right? And just like you see like Netflix and Amazon creating all this content and HBO for people, the reality is that the average American watches or consumes more than 40 hours of video a week. And that number has gone up steadily. And that the reason why they can do all that stuff is just we are super consumers of media, and it's insatiable. We're the Homer Simpsons at a buffet table for that stuff, right? So anyway, but so between Rafi found LFPR, made a recommendation to me, and what was interesting was he not only said that they were great, but he talked about what I needed to contribute to the party to make it work, because you can't just here you go, make great stuff happen, right? Like you have to generate great content, which allows them to, plant a lot of seeds, and then serendipity and timing when the moment strikes, there you are, and that you get a call from this and that. And like the TV thing was interesting because like I was very down on TV because I was like, the risk of doing something really bad on live TV is very high.
Hey, I do bad things on live internet TV every week. Speaking of shitty reputations. Like, did he just say that?
You got so much equity in the bank that doesn't matter at this point. Right?
Oh, I don't know.
But it's like the notion of so risk is high. And I was like, you know what? You can't really say anything interesting on TV anyway. So what's the point? And he was like, Eddie, you just got to understand there's something reptilian about when people see you on TV, and it doesn't really matter what you say. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, you could get on CNBC or at CNN or at Fox News or Fox Business News or whatever. I mean, you're on all of them. The impression I have, and this is the great thing about the PR you're doing, I don't know how often you're on that stuff. I mean, because who knows? But the impression I have is somebody who's in your orbit, right? Your LinkedIn shit and your social shit and all that. It's like, wow, Eddie is on TV all the time. I don't know whether you're on TV all the time or not, but your PR is giving me the impression that like Eddie's going to have his own CNBC show here soon.
It'll be pardon the interruption for business, but it'll be you and me on it. That's what it'll be.
Oh, that'd be great. They would let a guy like you on. They would never put my ass on television.
No, it'd have to be on like HBO or something. Then it'd be fine.
Maybe we should do the first ever HBO business show. Yeah. I'll have my agent call you.
Stop me in my tracks
and call them. But but it's really you made the commitment, is what you're saying, to do the PR, right? You drive your ass to the recording studio. Mm-hmm. It's a pain in the ass. It takes 2 hours. You're going to be on TV for 30 seconds. You do that, right?
Yeah. I think it's that's the other bit of it is the you're putting in the 10,000 hours of practice into it, right? To your point, like the LinkedIn videos I enjoy them, they're fun, and I'm glad that some people are looking at them and the like. But I do view it as it's practice, right? Towards can you make a point in 2 minutes or less without too many ums and that, but also in a way that's compelling and makes people want to pay attention to it. And so I think there's the content that you have to generate, there's the right partners that are there, the repetition and the sweat equity that kind of gets into, this is a skill that I think is got fat. Like talk about, the gift of gab is something that is, probably overvalued in the world, but for people like you and me, it's a good thing in that regard.
I don't know if it's overvalued. My friend and mentor, Bix Bixen, says in business, if you work in business, you get paid to talk. You get paid to have conversations.
That's a fair point.
Right? Because in your case, even if you have the legendary ideas, like, you got one of those brains where you should probably need a neck brace to hold your head up, right? So you got a lot of smart stuff in there. But you need to be able to communicate it effectively, or it's not going to be worth anywhere near what it should be or could be worth, right?
Yeah.
And so, Bix's perspective is pretty much everybody in business makes money talking.
That's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, it's not only you make money by talking, you can raise your prices by getting better at talking, as it were, in the right venue, in the right context there. But
yeah, it's like, wow, that was a very expensive conversation. The other one I've thought for a long time is, if I'm feeling cheeky, somebody says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I say, "I make very expensive slides."
Well, what it comes down to, what's because I've heard the phrase, "This is the $1 million slide," right? I mean, all of that kind of stuff. Is that at the end of the day, we all create an enormous amount of volume of words and spreadsheets and slides, and that, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of it rises to the top and matters the most, right? And that it is about, can you reduce the cycle time and inefficiency to get to that point, as well as can you remember these things throughout so that you're not recreating the wheel? But it is kind of like, the world is about high quality, not about quantity, but you need to create the quantity to get to those gems in the first place. But not mistaking that you just churn out stuff for the sake of churning it out. But I don't know. So all of it, I think, has come together where I'm glad that the perception, as which is, as important as reality is what it is. But to me, what I figured out is that it's sustainable because I enjoy it. And I didn't think that I would, but at the core of it is, can I come up with interesting content that, no client is asking me or paying me to solve, but, like this. So what I talked about on CNBC was about MoviePass, and they've never reached out to me, and that was just fine. And I was like, hey, it's in the news. MoviePass, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about them.
Yeah.
I'll teach you not to hire me.
Well, it's I just found it a really fascinating test case, right? It's a lot of our theories put to action, which is kind of what I've really been psyched about, is learning, right? So it's category design combined with superconsumers, right? And so I was like, okay, I should have an opinion on this. And so I did a Google survey, paid for it out of pocket, and just to get some data on it to see what the super consumer math of it was, because this was going to make it or break it on that math that was there. And what we found was that, yeah, this is legit viable thing. There's a lot of movie super consumers out there who would pay for this service. And that the problem is I call these, there's like angel and demon super consumers, right? So you think back to when AT&T and the iPhone, that whole thing started, and the unlimited minutes and data plans were coming out, right? You had demon super.
I bought one. I hate to interrupt you, but I bought one of the first iPad, right?
Yeah.
And it had an unlimited data. And they found a way to get that to not give me that anymore.
Well, I mean, there's great stories about. I mean, do you remember American Airlines, 25 years ago, for $250,000, unlimited first class tickets?
Oh yeah, and then did they change that?
I think they were waiting for them to die off, these people. And there's one guy.
The thing that drives me crazy about the airlines, and they can go fuck themselves over this. It's so disingenuous. It makes me want to. I mean, American, United. I'm assuming most of the big ones did it, but you get all these points, right? And what do? They increase the blackout periods. They double the number of points that are required. And so it's like, hey, we had a deal. And you retraded the deal. They sent me an email actually a couple days ago, American Airlines, and they were like, "Hey, if you do, I forget how many more miles between now and the end of the year, you'll maintain this." And I was like, "Hey, you know what? See this? Go fuck yourself. You think I'm going to go buy a ticket to Europe and I know I'm sure people have done this, right? Who fly to Boston or Europe and back just to get to their status level." I'm like, first of all, I don't want to get on a plane anymore. But more importantly, why would I do what you're telling me, which is buy a ticket, fly, get these points to achieve this level? Because you're just going to re-swizzle the whole game in your advantage, and because you're disingenuous bastards.
Yeah.
Am I wrong here, Eddie?
No. That's the. I think what you've hit on is the same problem that the telecom guys have, which is why airlines and telecom guys have terrible net promoter scores industry-wide, right? And the same problem that MoviePass had, which was you treat customers transactionally, and it's going to come back to bite you in the butt, right? I mean, that's the whole mindset of like, I think I can get away with it, and that's why I do.
So tell me what MoviePass did. I've sort of watched this tangentially, but did they retrade the deal on everybody? Is that what they did?
Yeah, so they flip flop on the pricing and what the product is, like a fish out of water and stuff. And so like it's the origin story is if I have this correct, is that it was originally $50 a month. And they had 15,000 users, and then to scale it, they dropped the price significantly from 50 to 10.
And this was if you paid $10 a month, you supposedly had unlimited movies at a movie theater. I go to my local Lowe's or whatever, right?
Yeah. So maybe like one a day, but effectively you could watch 30 movies a month if you wanted to,
in a theater with a lot of people on their cell phones farting and all that.
all of that good stuff, right? Yeah, exactly. So they did that, and then shortly thereafter, in like 6 months, they skyrocketed from 15,000 to 3 million subscribers. Now, the problem that they had was one of the CNBC anchors used a ski lift analogy. It's like I sell these ski lifts, but I don't own the ski rental stores on the mountain, nor do I own the concessions. And so I think if I were to summarize their business strategy, it was, let's scale this bad boy as quickly as we can and kind of shake down the movie theaters so that they share with us concession, which is where all the profit is made, or we get so big that we can bully them into lowering the cost of the tickets that we're buying, because they were paying full retail prices for the tickets, which is the business model just made no sense. It was upside down that way.
Hey, math was pretty much over for me in grade 3, but this sounds like a math problem that even I could understand.
Yeah, just kind of, how about, don't need to go to school to know. I think your cost should be lower than your revenue, ideally. That would be a good thing.
And making it up on volume when it's not is not a good strategy. We pressure tested that in the .com era days. We know losing money and then making it up on volume, those two things don't go together.
Well, and so the fascinating part about this whole kind of, and it's like, I just find this fascinating because there's this like an HBR case study being lived out in real time, right? Is they keep tinkering with the price and the product without realizing that, there's virtually nothing that they can do to fix this, in the sense that if the price is high enough, people won't subscribe. Right? Like why, I may as well just buy tickets on my own, right? So let's say a movie ticket costs $10 per ticket. Why would I pay MoviePass $10 a month for a $10 ticket if I just, why subscribe when I just do it on my own there, right? So by definition, they have to lose money for this to be attractive to people, right? I'm like, okay, so my whole thing has been, you're misreading the landscape. You think this is about movies, and you think it's about the movie super consumer who's really taking you to the bank there, because this is the whole, you've invited Homer Simpson to a buffet, and you're going to have problems there if you don't have restrictions there.
Homer's going to chow down.
He's going to totally bankrupt you entirely and stuff. And so the issue is that you have to think about this as the broader experience itself. And if you had actually looked at super consumers, that there's different types, right? That's the whole angels and demons super consumer that we're talking about, right? There are people who go to movies by themselves. They love the cinema, the movie itself, and they care nothing about the concessions, about the evening. They just want to see the movies, right? And these are the people that are screwing you over because you've allowed them to, right?
Yeah.
So some people have gone from, I see 13 movies a year to I see 100 in 6 months. And you don't
100 movies in a theater in 6 months.
Yeah.
That's like every movie that comes out then, essentially,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And I have that appeals to me not at all. But
no.
There are super consumers who do that. So I think it's number one, the misunderstanding of a one-size-fits-all model that could work. Number two, it's you fundamentally underestimated how much more demand that a super consumer can have. Like if I sold you for $10 a month a subscription to tequila, and you had unlimited tequila,
I would consume a lot of tequila.
you would consume a lot of tequila. Somebody who is not a tequila super consumer would not. And so I think that was the math that they were trying to make, is like,
I would dial back the scotch and dial up the tequila. That's what I would do.
And I think to probably an epic level, right? I mean, my sense is that there's no modeling that could predict how elastic your demand is for if it was tequila or scotch, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you could persuade me.
Okay, twist my arm, right? So,
exactly.
But like, there's some great analysis that was done in conjunction with this, because like there's other people who are social super consumers, right? The movie is part of a broader experience. I'm going out to eat with my wife or my significant other or whatever. So it's a date or it's a family event, right? Like all the kids are coming and stuff. And what's interesting is that you look at the total share of wallet per evening. If you're a solo moviegoer, it's $50. If you're on a date, it's $100. If you're on
it's $50.
Yeah, if you factor in like you're going to eat beforehand, maybe you get a drink, maybe you Uber or Lyft or whatever, right?
Right, the whole thing.
The whole shebang, the whole evening out. And so a family is $150, right? And so had MoviePass just said, this is a subscription for families or for couples or for friends, a group of friends, I want you to go out. What's definitely true is that they're going to see more movies, but it's just, if you and I were going to a movie, like it's so much harder to coordinate both of our schedules. I mean, we can barely coordinate our schedules that we've never met in person face to face.
Yeah, no, that part's really weird too. We are going to fix that sooner or later.
We will fix that. Yeah. But like, if you're just going to a movie by yourself, no skin off, it's so easy. The inertia to go see a movie, make that decision, and consume a lot is very, very low. So had they made it a group thing, would have done much better, and that probably would have led them to like and it's no surprise, everyone in the movie industry kind of worships at the idol of the movies. Like it's Hollywood being one of the few industries that has an award show devoted just to itself and to pat itself on the back.
It loves to rub itself in front of everybody, doesn't it? And talk about how awesome it is. And like, I don't watch the Academy Awards or any of that stuff. I could give a shit about actors.
Yeah.
Because the way I look at it is, you pretend to be somebody else for a living. You play make believe. Like 3-year-olds do that. Yeah. Like, it's just not that interesting. Look, I like a good movie like The Next Person, and Steven Spielberg, and of course, and I love, but I don't want to listen to a 2-hour podcast with some dumb celebrity actor telling me about their process. It's just not that interesting. Yeah. You play somebody else for a living, and you get paid way too much to do it.
I'm with you there, but
here's my question.
Yeah,
doesn't MoviePass stand as a shining example of, hey, don't build a business model that says if our business works, we fail?
Yes, that's for sure.
Like, isn't it like the gym industry?
Yep.
Where they're hoping nobody shows up, right? They're hoping that they sell a bunch of memberships on January 1st, and that, like, I don't know, some 80% of them, or I don't know, I'm making this up, I have no idea. But if and I don't mean to pick on them, but I will, because as a brand, it's so stupid. Do you know that 24-Hour Fitness, this brand?
Yeah.
They're not open 24 hours.
Oh.
Do you know that?
I did not.
When I found that out, that like some meaningful, I don't know what percentage, but like they're not open 24 hours. How can you call a company 24-Hour Fitness and not be open 24 hours?
Well, this is what MoviePass is finding, is that we're a MoviePass, but now because they're losing so much money, you can only see 3 movies a month. It used to be some version of unlimited, as it were, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, when your brand is the antithesis of what it's supposed to be, then that is a problem.
Well, yeah, if your business works and you fail, then you're a dummy. Is that not the takeaway here?
Yeah, well, and I think just the basic math of it, of like a gym membership, the marginal cost for an extra person to come is 0, right? That's unless you have to build another.
They all come at the same time.
Unless they all come at the same time, then you have a problem. Whereas MoviePass, every incremental movie you saw had a huge variable cost to it, right? And so it was like,
Yeah.
this is not a scalable proposition, as you said. But like to me, the biggest miss of this is that they're fixated on the price of the subscription and how many movies, the cost of it on the side. But what they really ought to be looking at is, you know what? Let's say I take my family to a movie, and there's only a limited set of restaurants we're going to eat at. It's going to be, because I have 3 kids, and
Right,
California
and they're all going to be close to the theater because you don't
Ruby
want to park
Tuesday,
twice,
whatever.
and so they're going to be walking distance to the theater. And you could, with a quick Google search or whatever, you could figure out what the 5 restaurants are that most people are likely to eat at before going to Theater X, right?
Yep. And so there's, let's say, to your point, the defined set is like there's 5 options that you have to choose from. I have a family of 3 kids. There's 5 of us. We're going to drop, $50, $100, whatever, just sheer size of the family. If MoviePass said, hey, 5 restaurants in the area, I know that Eddie and family are coming, pay me $5 and I'm going to steer him one way or the other with it.
Yeah.
Give me the opportunity to offer up a free appetizer or an adult beverage, as it were, right? And I can steer this demand somewhere in the like there.
Maybe some tequila.
And they're now they have something really interesting, right? It's that the movies are the loss leader to the broader experience that they can monetize, because guess what? These restaurants are far less consolidated than the movie theaters are, and they weren't going to respond to you shaking them down anyway and stuff.
So if you assume MoviePass is in some trouble, right?
Yeah.
You assume their value or valuation. Are they public or what?
They are public. So
what are they? What's their market cap? Do you know?
I do. I want to see your face as you Google it.
Hold on, I'm gonna do this right here in real time.
So it's owned by a parent company. The ticker symbol is HMNY.
There it is. Yahoo Finance. Here we go. Let's just see this. Where's the market cap here, Lochhead?
What would you guess?
I don't know enough about the business to see some fucking pop-up is in front of the market cap. Can you believe that? No, I don't want all that. Oh, now it's taking me to some other fucking screen. This is what we were talking about earlier, Eddie. All I want is the market cap of the company. I don't want all these pop-ups. Does this say the market cap of the company is $200,000?
Yes.
Is that what this says?
That's what it is.
Because I'm not that good with math. Hold on. Let me put on my glasses. The market cap of MoviePass is $200,000. So here's my idea. Tell me if this is a dumb idea. Who's the biggest movie chain? Is it Lowe's or who is
AMC,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, those people.
Yeah.
If you were those people, $200,000, shit, you and I could buy MoviePass.
We should buy it, yeah.
So if I'm Lowe's or whoever, I just buy MoviePass.
Yeah.
And if the movies are the loss leader to get the concession sales, then I put together a program. I do a little bit of math so that, I don't know, you tell me that maybe we break even or even lose a little bit of money on whatever the dollar a month is for. But then I get, to your point, all the concessions, and then maybe I even do a play with the 5 restaurants around each of my theaters, and I have what I need to drive traffic to my business for $200,000.
So this is the fascinating part about the whole idea. I think a Tim Ferriss quote of "ego is the enemy," right? Is AMC has launched their own subscription, which is doing very well for them.
Oh, it is. Okay,
but it's only within AMC, right? And so they're. I've always said they're executing really well, but an old school strategy. They should buy MoviePass because MoviePass can work in every theater. It's a asset light strategy, right? That they can benefit in some cases, but not. But they won't because they have their. I mean, maybe they will, but they won't because they've got their own pass that's there. Now, the other intriguing part of this whole thing, which my hypothesis,
but it's $200,000.
$200,000. It's paper clips, as you said, right?
I mean, for a company like that, $200,000. They lost $200,000 in the cafeteria yesterday. No, like really.
Stale popcorn and like, so here's the other interesting news that I'm following is that Amazon, right, is supposedly in discussions to buy Landmark Theaters, which is the high-end artsy fartsy theaters that Mark.
Isn't it funny that Jeff Bezos drove all the physical businesses out of business, and now he's becoming a giant physical business? Isn't there something like, look, and you know me, I'm a big trumpet player, so to speak, for entrepreneurship, and I admire this guy immensely. So
Yeah.
I don't want to be misconstrued on this, but there is something bizarrely, wildly weird, and maybe potentially, sort of Dr. Evilly. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
we drive all the physical businesses out of business, and then we become a physical business.
Yeah, it's
And am I the only person in the world who's a little bit creeped out going into Whole Foods now?
oh yeah, no. It's for sure. There was a great piece in the Atlantic about juxtapositioning old Sears and the narrative of Sears versus Amazon. Do you see that one?
No, that sounds like interesting. What's the
It
point?
was really killer. It was like how they talked about the origin story as a catalog, right? Which is
Yep.
a commerce, 1.0
Yeah, it was
as a
e-commerce when
word.
when the website was a catalog, right?
Yeah. And then retail stores, and then appliances like Kenmore and the like and stuff.
Yeah, I remember they were big in auto for a long time, right?
Big in auto, big into finance because they launched credit cards, right?
Yep.
Because they did. I believe Allstate Insurance is a spinoff of Sears, if I recall correctly, and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So like it's kind of this cautionary tale of or Discover card. That's the one that it was originally a Sears card. So you think about Sears in its heyday, not what it is now, right? It's a little bit of like Amazon in the sense of it had tentacles everywhere. Started out as a e-commerce mail order catalog business and retail.
I hate to interrupt you, but tentacles. That's a great word, isn't it? There's something interesting about that word, tentacles.
Yeah. And so,
but I digress.
It is creepy, and I think that one of a couple things. I mean, I'm not going to bet against Bezos and Amazon, but like at some point it gets too unwieldy to manage, and at some point, I think that people will eventually wake up and pay a price premium for privacy, as it were, right? And whether it's expressed as I don't want part of, stay away tentacles. I'm going to do business elsewhere because I don't want.
I don't want your tentacles on my tentacles.
Exactly,
so to speak. Although recently I got taken to school. I've had this creeped out position on Alexa, right? And so I don't have these things in my house. And my buddy Jason DeFilippo, who's the producer of the Jordan Harbinger show, he sent me this email because we had this episode with Ray Wong on, and he and I were going off on Alexa. He doesn't have them either, and he's a tech.
Yeah,
he's the number one tech analyst in the world according to somebody, especially me. But anyway, so Jason tells me that he sends me this email and goes, "Hey man, just so you know, like I'm a technical guy. I actually did some packet analysis on Alexa." And you got nothing to worry about because unless you say the magic word, there's no packet exchange going on when you and your buddies are talking about the bank heist that you want to pull off or whatever. So you don't have to worry about that Jeff Bezos is listening to everything you and your family talks about because he did the packet analysis. And I thought, oh, maybe he's right, and maybe I'm a donkey, but I digress.
Well,
so what is Amazon doing in this regard?
Well, you just freaked me out because I had this image of that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, because this business of like I anticipate that you're going to be this is what the machines are doing, right?
Yeah.
Right now, Duncan Davidson would tell you that we're all going to be okay. Just so you know, he's like he's been on a couple times on the second episode of Legends and Losers that he's on. He says it's all going to be okay. We should just relax. The integration of the machines and the humans. Anyway, what's Amazon trying to do here?
Amazon's supposedly looking at buying landmark theaters, so physical movie theaters, right?
Wow.
And this has been the thing to me about why MoviePass is people will ask me, do I think it'll survive? I'm like, well, it'll survive, maybe not as a standalone company, but the category will survive, and somebody will take it over and do it better, right? Because it's going to be one of a couple of things of. Maybe if MoviePass had actually figured out it's not about the movies, it's about the total experience and how do I monetize that whole thing. That could have worked, but they're not doing it. AMC or Lowe's, they could have bought it and said, we're going to revolutionize the movie industry and kind of diversify away from physical assets. Or an Amazon could easily step in here and say, you know what? They could do everything that they want.
200 grand.
It's 200 grand. Exactly. Like and but like, I think the move towards the physical theaters is also really, really compelling too, right? Because it makes Prime that much more valuable. It's something that Netflix isn't doing, right? It's a differentiator there. And I think their ability to, this whole kind of bullying as a business model only really works if you're the biggest bully at some level. And
exactly.
Amazon,
you got to be able to be the toughest man in the world if you're going to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And their ability to exert pressure on Hollywood because they create their own content and because they now could theoretically distribute it. And if they picked up Landmark and either, just launched the MoviePass value proposition under Prime, then bye-bye MoviePass and, theoretically bye-bye AMC in the long run, right? I mean, this is the whole, not to get super nefarious about it, but it's really not a matter of if, it's about when and what priority this is versus doing the same thing in food or whatever else it is.
Whatever other opportunity. And not to mention the fact that there's a lot of smart people that think that Amazon is the most important enterprise technology company on the planet.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the AWS story is so over the top, mind blowing. The irony too, to me, about the AWS thing is that is not an original idea at all, right? There was this company, the first company that tried to do this in what I would call the modern era. Of course, there was always mainframes and time sharing and all that. So if you want to go all the way back to that, absolutely. But in the sort of the more modern era, there was a company, I don't know if you remember this company in the 90s called, I think it was Exodus was what they were called. Was it Exodus?
Yeah. No, I know
it was run by a gal. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah,
they were very hot for a while, and they were like a sort of AWS meets sort of Dropboxy kind of a company. And you would buy space for them and all this stuff, right?
I don't remember the name, but it sounds like that. The way.
And so this idea of like renting computer time and capability has been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And obviously they reimagined the category, and the rest is history. But it is a mind blowing thing. But you think they get to a place where they collapse under their own weight?
I mean, at some point, I think the complexity becomes overwhelming, and so one of a couple things, right? It either gets too unwieldy. Consumers fight back on privacy, right? Because there is, I mean, regardless of whatever you believe, this goes back to the missionary thing, right? It's like, whether I trust Bezos is one thing, whether I trust the man, but do I trust some low-level director on some ancillary business that's not, going to do good by the business? But like, I continue to believe that like, companies that have any sort of profit incentive to make money off of your information, the risk is always going to be there for some sort of a thing like that. So either privacy concerns, complexity concerns, or Bezos decides he wants to do something else, do his Blue Origin thing more frequently if it's time.
Focus on charity the way
charity,
he did or something.
Yeah. I mean, it can't last forever is kind of the thing, and who knows how and when. But
well, fascinating. And now you've become the television guru on all this stuff.
Well, I will say that this medium is so much more fun. Like, I think to your point, I just need to do enough of that stuff to make it feel like I'm on more than I actually am. And then this is where the real meat and business wisdom actually comes out, because I think it's two guys or gals just bantering about scars and war stories and stuff, right?
Yeah, and of course the thing that I had no idea about is would this idea of having essentially a formatless show, it's just a conversation with a couple of folks, would it work, right?
Yeah.
Because we live in a world, I mean, you know this better than I do on the consumer side. I mean, people want a format. They want it to be predictable. They want it to be the same length, the same size, the same taste, And so you say, hey, sometimes this podcast is awesomely smart. Sometimes it's really stupid, and sometimes it's really short, and sometimes it's really long, and sometimes, it's like It is the box full of chocolates, right?
Yeah.
It really is. Sometimes some of the chocolates have been in the box a little too long.
We'll let you decide which it is.
Yeah. All right, Eddie. Anything else you want to touch on before we kick out?
Yeah, no, I think one of the cool things that if your fans and your listeners would love to engage on is I'm working on a beta, and it's a hybrid of consulting and growth strategy and product. And so I thought I could help crowdsource inspiration to figure this out. But the basic idea is, every entrepreneur looking for investors or fast-growing company, you have that. You talked about killer slides, right? The TAM, the total addressable market. And I am working on something that I think is something a little more robust than, hey, there's X million people, and if they pay this, and the total addressable market is that, right? And so there's a product that I'm working on that is not only what is the size of the prize, but who is the size of the prize? In some part, Superconsumers, which is, I think, the next level double click down that people don't do. Why is the size of the prize? Like, why does this exist? And why should it have a rationale to exist? Where is it? When is it? And how much bigger could it be? Right. And so the example that I give here is, and what I'm really trying to do is kind of distill this down to, and again, it's really at this space a B2C one versus a B2B one. I have to figure out how to do the B2B one, but can I apply everything that I've learned about superconsumers and growth strategy into a 10-question survey? So like Twitter, it's constrained, right? Can I ask 10 questions of enough consumers to figure out a more credible size of the prize, but in a way that answers who, why, where, when, and how, much bigger, so that an entrepreneur who's really got a real there, has a better shot at getting funding from an angel or seed or Series A. And an investor feels better about investing behind something that is actually going to be more legit than, hey, here's my back of the envelope and why you should believe me and stuff. And so, it's something that I'm tinkering with. Maybe it'll be nothing at all, but I think part of the beauty of the solopreneur thing is I get to tinker and create stuff and watch it fizzle or fail or maybe succeed and stuff. So.
Well, and actually, that's the fun thing for me about being a digital solopreneur, entrepreneur, media guy now, because you can try stuff, right? You can A/B test an email. In our case, we did a spin-off of Legends and Losers.
Yeah.
That was a totally crazy idea. I thought, we're going to set part of this shit to music, and we're going to what? And then it becomes like a top 30 podcast when it first comes out with almost no promotion. Because I was like, I don't know. I kept saying to Nick Cullen, and like, Nicky, I don't know if this thing's going to go. And he's like, we're going to be bigger than S-Town. I'm like, from your mouth to God's ears there, brother. And we're not bigger than S-Town. But, the podcast has done incredibly well. But to your point, we do live in a world where we can experiment. So what are you looking for people to do if they want to experiment with Eddie on this?
Reach out to me on Twitter at Eddie Would Grow, or find me on LinkedIn, or just send me an email, eddie@eddiewoodgrow.net. And I've run a couple of betas to figure this out, but I'm kind of interested in just talking to people about, is this an actual need that exists in the marketplace, and what are the gaps? To your point, like what is the category problem I'm trying to solve for, and my point of view on it. Like, so I have some hypotheses from different entrepreneurs and angel investors that I've talked to. But if folks are interested in, like, hey, I need to get funding, but no one believes my TAM, and angel investors are like, I like this entrepreneur, but I don't believe his or her TAM with it. I'd like to be able to step in the middle and provide something that is a little more credible and gives more confidence to people, so that we can make the markets happen faster.
Do you have a name for this product yet? Your TAM finder. Hey, maybe we call it TAM Tinder. You want to make sure you're in the right TAM. I did a swipe left
right.
or a swipe right. And by the way, I don't know which one is yes and which one is no, because, and I'm not lying about that. I'm a married guy, so I don't know how to use those apps. And I'm not just saying that.
TAM Tinder will certainly be memorable. So
TAM Tinder.
Use that as a beta for that.
That could be your beta name. Well, that sounds very cool, Eddie. Anything else?
That's it, man.
All right, brother. Well, it's great to connect with you again, and Listen, it's been too long since you were on. It's been a year. So I would like to have you on a more regular basis
Absolutely.
if you're up for it.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. So always a blast, and looking forward to the next time.
All right. Stay legendary, as I know you will, Eddie.
Thanks, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
See ya.
Whew. If you love this conversation as much as I do, it would make a huge difference if you shared this episode on social media right now. Your shares are the thing that make the biggest difference to Legends and Losers, and I can't thank you enough for it. Now, speaking of making a difference, in business, one of the biggest things that really sucks is not knowing what's going on, not knowing, are your sales tracking to plan? What's the status of your orders? Do you have enough inventory? Do you have enough cash? Are you accurately forecasting your revenue and expenses? And if not, what are you going to do about it? Now, if you think about those core questions that entrepreneurs have to answer, how many people do you have to talk to get those basic questions answered? If you are using NetSuite right now, you could get all of those questions and way more answered on your smartphone. Yeah, your smartphone being smart about your business instantly. With Oracle NetSuite. NetSuite is the cloud-based business management platform that gives you real-time visibility into every component of the operations of your business. It's the one source of truth for revenue, expenses, customers, orders, inventory, and even human resources. And it's super easy to use. It's cloud-based, and you can get all of this stuff on an incredible NetSuite dashboard on your desktop, on your laptop, on your iPad, and of course your smartphone. Some of the fastest growing companies on the planet use NetSuite every day to drive their growth. People like Ring, Spotify, and the fun surfboard brand Mons Royale, and many others. So right now, NetSuite is offering you a unique opportunity. As a listener of Legends and Losers, go to netsuite.com/legends, and you can book a free 1-hour growth review with an expert in your industry. Because you see, NetSuite is tailored for certain kind of industries. If you're a distributor, if you're a manufacturer, if you're selling things online, etc., there are specific NetSuite capabilities for you. So when you talk to your growth expert, you'll be talking to somebody who knows your industry, knows some of the keys that are up with you to talk about opportunities and challenges for growth. So go to netsuite.com/legend because it's good to know things, and now you're gonna with NetSuite. Again, thank you so much for checking out Legends and Losers. It really means the world to us. We have a new website. Check it out, legendsandlosers.com. And again, we would love it if you shared the show. All right. We would like to thank the amazing book, The Smash Hit from Harvard Business Press, from our friend and guest today, Eddie Yoon, Superconsumers. Why not pick up a couple hundred copies today? Speaking of books, you should pick up a couple hundred copies of Niche Down, the #1 bestseller from Heather Clancy and myself, How to Become Legendary by Being Different. Check it out exclusively on Amazon.com. Equity Directory, the invite-only network of entrepreneurs and startup talent exchanging work for equity. That's right. If you're in the startup ecosystem, and you want to partner with, you want to work with startups, and you're willing to do that for primarily equity, check out equitydirectory.com. One Life Fully Lived, one of my absolute favorite charities, run by my dear friend Tim Rode. Dream, plan, and live your best life. We are a nonprofit dedicated to helping you get a solid financial base and then building your dream life on top of that. We try to deliver all of our content for as close to free as we can. We have great events, an amazing website. Check out onelifefullylived.org. The good people at Spiro. This is the sales app that I love. It's the sales app for people who like to make money and sales managers who like to make money. Check out Spiro.ai. Now, speaking of unbelievable content, check out growwire.com. This is the new place on the interweb for entrepreneurs who want to grow themselves and grow their business. Myself, our friend Eddie, my dear friend and partner on Niche Down, Heather Clancy, we all write for growwire.com as well as many others. Check out growwire.com and get yourself growing. Interview Valet, the leading podcast interview marketing agency. If you're a thought leader, get your leading thoughts on some podcasts. You be the guest, and Interview Valet does the rest. And Scotch. Remember, if it's not Scottish, it's crap. And don't forget MSF, our good friends at Doctors Without Borders. These are the amazing people who do some of the toughest work in some of the toughest places on planet Earth. So please make a donation today. Check out Doctors Without Borders, or MSF. All right. We would like to remind you that today's information is provided to you solely for informational purposes, and this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love it. We would love you just a little bit extra if you shared the shit out of it right now. We must warn you that every episode of Legends and and Losers is clearly produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Support your local category designer. Don't forget to listen to the Ramones. Watch The Big Lebowski. Do not pour hot coffee on your crotch. It's okay. Go ahead, pee in your wetsuit. Don't forget to tell 2 friends you love about 2 podcasts that you love, because you know what? It's hard to get into podcasts when you're new. So sit down, help somebody with their smartphone, and get them into podcasts. Thank you, Dandy Candy. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go to SAP CEO Bill McDermott. Sorry, Billy. We just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you again soon on Legends and Losers.